Vietnam has a flatline tariff of 20%. But if the goods come from China into Vietnam and to the US, then it jumps to 40%. So I think there is a strategy to basically punitively go after China or on the tariff side directly or indirectly, and that's where India benefits.
Hello and welcome to StratNews Global for the gist. This is Nayanima Basu. We have with us today a very special guest. He is Dr. Mukesh Aghi. He's the CEO of the US India Strategic Partnership Forum. And we are going to understand and unravel, in the sense, what is actually happening between India and US when it comes to bilateral trade, the bilateral trade agreement, and also the fact that geopolitically, whether the trade deal or whether the trade relationship, how that will impact also the fact that India is going to host the Quad Summit and India is expecting a big visit by President Trump. Welcome to the gist, Mr. Aghi, and thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know you are traveling, so we won't take much of your time. But just to understand from you, in absolutely simple terms, if you can tell us, how is this India-US bilateral trade agreement, which is happening after a lot of efforts, and previous several governments, both in India as well as US, had been wanting to have a trade agreement like this. How is it going to benefit the companies, the exporters, at the very, let's say, the lower level? How is it going to help both sides?
I think there are a couple of ways it helps India and the US, the business community. First is studies have shown that if you have a trade deal between the two countries, the exports imports between the two countries will go up by 64%. Uh, the objective is to take the trade, which is $200 billion, to $500 billion by 2030, and the trade deal helps from that perspective. But more important is that when you benchmark India with other countries in the region, especially China, Vietnam, Cambodia, India will have a flat baseline tariff of 10% as compared to Vietnam at 20%, China's at 30%, Cambodia will be in the same range. It does give incentive to the US companies to look at their supply chain away from these regions to come to India. And more important is, beside India becoming a manufacturing hub, it also basically gives them access to the Indian market. When you look at Apple, for an example, has been able to move a lot of their manufacturing of phones to India. But more important, their domestic sale has gone above $8 billion in the last couple of years. But more important is the app business also has crossed around $5 billion. So I think the trade deal provides a stable platform for trade, supply chain management, and in market access to both countries.
Mhm. But also talking about the fact, as you are, also highlighting on the 10% baseline of tariff, there is a confusion in the sense that under the bilateral trade agreement, do you think that baseline will remain? And also, US is also negotiating a comprehensive trade deal also with China. How is that going to impact?
Well, you have to understand that this is an interim trade deal. There'll be part two, where we'll have to get into non-tariff barriers and other complex issues. And we're hoping that by fall that can be finalized. And so when the president comes to India, that can be signed. Now, to answer your question with China relationship with the US is very complex. China will prolong the discussion. It will make every effort to tire the US negotiators and ensure that at least the process continues rather than finalizing. We've seen that in the last Trump 1.0. We've seen it other areas. So we don't expect a trade deal happening with China because it's not about just trade between US and China. is about geopolitical, it's about dominance, it's about controlling the manufacturing industrial base itself. So we do expect at least India will sign a trade deal, whereas China will be a challenge.
Hmm. Well, interesting that you say China will be a challenge, but then there is also a commentary that is going around in India is the fact that this can be another such trade deal where India will end up importing more from the US than exporting. What do you have to say to that? And tomorrow, when the deal with China is signed, why will American investors, will come to India and not go to China? So, there will be this competition, right?
So when you look at on the good sides, the exports from India in the last 12 months have gone up by almost 15%. And the trade deal provides India pharmaceutical, India's German jewelry, India energy product to have more access to the US environment. I'm not sure what we can import more with the exception of defense products. Those are more of a capital decision made by the government itself. On the smaller items, there's not much to be imported because what we are seeing is electronics such as Apple, they're going to start manufacturing more and more in India. So I don't see that kind of a threat. Yes, you will have capital machineries being imported for manufacturing, but we do expect a lot of supply chain moving from other part of the world into India itself because of the flatline based agreement between the two countries.
And also to again repeat my question, do you think that 10% baseline will it remain, or that is there to stay, or that's going to go away?
It is hard. It's hard to say that because you have a president who basically takes decision on his own rather than a team of policymakers working on that. If it stays, I don't think it has have much impact on India's export because we saw with 10% base also exports are going up from India into United States. And the same way, India will also put 10%. So it'll be a reciprocal agreement between two countries having 10% tariffs on each other's goods itself. So it kind of flattens out the arrangement. But more important is if like this 10% vis-a-vis China. For example, Vietnam has a flatline tariff of 20%. But if the goods come from China into Vietnam and to the US, then it jumps to 40%. So I think there is a strategy to basically punitively go after China on the tariff side directly or indirectly, and that's where India benefits.
Hmm. But also coming to the fact, as you are talking about, iPhones in India, we've heard President Trump talking about the fact that he's not quite happy with the decision. We just saw what's happening with the Chinese laborers in Foxconn. So, do you think that will be a cause of concern as well? Because India was, emerging as this manufacturing hub for Apple.
Absolutely not. Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, has gone down and showed to the president that if you manufacture phones in the US, iPhones, the cost to the consumer is going to be $3,500. Studies have shown consistently for the US companies when they're manufacturing outside the US is 60% cheaper. And so I don't think from a shareholder perspective, from a fiduciary responsibility perspective, Apple will basically move that manufacturing from India into the US. It may, it has committed to invest $500 billion manufacturing on advanced manufacturing. And if you look at our event, Howard Lutnick said, we cannot bring all manufacturing back to the US, but what we can do is bring advanced manufacturing and have our partner countries such as India do the lower level. And lower level is also still advanced manufacturing. For example, in chip manufacturing, US is focused on bringing 7 nanometers and below manufacturing to the US, whereas in India, we're focused on 15 nanometers and above in India itself. And so both sides can partner and complement each other from that perspective.
Mhm. Also, if I can ask you, Mr. Aghi, in the sense that when it comes to steel and aluminum tariffs, while we know that it has adversely impacted Indian companies, has it benefited the US in any which way? And do you think this is going to be another trade irritant, because we are again seeing India taking US at the WTO? So how is it, advocacy groups like you are kind of facing these challenges? What are the companies telling you?
Well, tariffs are always bad for the consumer because eventually it's the consumer who pays higher prices on both sides. And from our perspective, we feel that having an ad hoc tariff on steel and aluminum is not healthy from a competition perspective and from a trade perspective. So India, in its right, has taken US into WTO because it believes that it's not fair on part of US to impose those specific tariffs. But you have to understand, President Trump does not believe in a multilateral institution. He feels that they have been very, very biased against the US and have been manipulated by the Chinese. So that's the reason he's taken the unilateral approach to put tariffs on countries who have a large surplus with the US or who he feels are giving unfair uh, trade advantages to the US companies.
Hmm. And also, in the sense that what we are hearing from the Trump administration is the fact that they do not want a part one or part two. It seems that they have put everything on the table. If I can quote the president, but India really wants a part one and part two. Do you think there is a meeting line in that?
US cannot do a complete trade deal without congressional approval, as per the law. So it is in the interest of President Trump to do a part one and keep on working on part two. And that's a strategy both USTR and Commerce Department from India have agreed to take this forward. So I think it is in the interest of India and also interest of US to basically bisect this treaty in two parts, because part two will dealing with some complex issues like non-tariff barriers and others which needs to be addressed between the two countries. So I think it does make sense to have part one and later on part two deal between the two countries.
Mhm. And also, whether there is a deal or no deal, do you really think American investors are today keen on coming to India? What are the regulatory challenges that we've been hearing for several years now? Have they been addressed? Do you think even under a deal, and where tariffs go down, will they be keen to come this whole hog into the Indian market?
Well, deal or no deal, the US companies are very keen to get market access of the Indian market, both from selling their product domestically and at the same time leveraging the efficient, intelligent labor market to build their products so they can export from India to the rest of the world. What we are seeing is when you look at the global capability centers, we have which has crossed over 2,000, 60% are American, and they're leveraging local talent to basically build IP in India itself. Now, what we have to do is take that IP into manufacturing in India. And that's where I think a trade deal is going to help, where India will have lower tariffs as compared to other countries. And that's where the job creation is going to happen in India itself. So to answer your question, absolutely, the US companies are very keen to leverage the partnership, and they will continue to do that as things move forward.
But what about issues like taxation, infrastructure, logistics, and the bottlenecks? How do you think that will be addressed, or that is happening?
Well, that's a challenge. And so I think US companies have found that best thing is go to different states and deal from that perspective. So you have some very reformative and leading chief ministers who are keen to ease things for companies is coming into their state. So what we are seeing is states like Telangana, states like Maharashtra, states like Gujarat are attracting more and more investment because they're able to provide a much better regulatory environment, much better tax environment to these companies. So I think, yes, challenges are there and they'll continue, but the effort is being made on the state level to sort some of these issues out.
Mhm. And lastly, Mr. Aghi, if I can ask you, because since geopolitics is now also, penetrating in a very large way, the business decisions are being made. We saw recently what had happened between India and US when it came to, the 90-hour kind of conflict that India had with Pakistan, and US kind of intervening in it and saying that it did a ceasefire. But while all that had been discussed in the Quad foreign ministers meeting, do you think the president, since you're based out of Washington, he's kind of keen in taking Quad forward? Will the Quad summit go through, or do you think everything will still kind of remain stuck on trade?
So I think the relationship between US and India is not just about trade. It's about geopolitics, and that's where the Quad comes in. It's about I2U2. It's about IMAC corridor, which is moving forward. It's about people to people. We have 5.5 million Indian Americans who are key economic player. In fact, they make 1% of the population and generate 6% of the GDP. So I think in every aspect, the relationship will move forward. Quad is critical for the US from a geopolitical perspective. It's important for India also from a geopolitical perspective. So is I2U2, so is IMAC. So I don't think those are being put on the back burner. It's just a matter of priority at the moment. The trade deals which are going to be announced before July 9th are important. And then I think you'll see a focus taking place on other aspects of the strategic partnership between the two countries.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Aghi, for your time. Thank you for giving us your time and speaking to StratNews Global.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for watching the gist on Strat News Global. That was Mr. Mukesh Aghi talking about the fact that how India and US are not just linked on trade. Yes, the bilateral trade agreement is important, but India and US are also linked geopolitically and remain as the closest allies. Thank you for watching this interaction. Take care.